You may think that male infidelity reveals itself only in hidden messages on the phone, in late-night work excuses, or in sudden changes of routine. But that is not the whole truth. The most revealing sign is not found in the streets, at the office, or on social media. The real evidence appears in the bedroom, in the space where the unconscious speaks without filters. It is there, in the place where intimacy should be the peak of connection, that the truth he tries to hide slips through. Jung once said that the human psyche cannot keep a mask forever, because the unconscious will always find a way to expose inner conflict. A man who cheats can rehearse answers, cover his tracks, and manipulate words. But when the body moves, when gestures escape, and when the eyes turn away, the truth is revealed. The problem is that many women, carried by passion, prefer to rationalize the signs. They choose not to notice the difference in his touch. They justify the sudden coldness as stress. They believe the lack of desire is only fatigue. This is common and predictable, because the mind tries to protect itself from the pain of discovery. It feels more comfortable to believe excuses than to face the reality that the man may be giving his energy to someone else. The signs the body cannot hide. When a man is unfaithful, he can try to hide his actions with words, excuses, or carefully planned stories. He might delete messages, erase calls, or invent reasons for staying late at work. But no matter how convincing his narrative may sound, the body has its own language, and this language is much harder to control. While words can be rehearsed, movements and gestures often escape unconsciously, revealing the truth he is trying to conceal. The first thing to notice is the way his eyes behave. A man who is hiding something often avoids direct contact. Where once his gaze would meet yours naturally, now it drifts away, even in casual conversations. He might look at his phone more often, pretend to be distracted, or simply avoid eye contact when sensitive subjects arise. The eyes are windows of the soul, and when guilt or fear is present, they reflect the inner conflict, no matter how hard he tries to disguise it. Another subtle sign appears in touch. Before, his embrace may have been warm, spontaneous, full of presence. Now it feels mechanical, colder, almost as if he is fulfilling an obligation. When intimacy becomes shallow, the change is not always about fatigue or stress, as many women are told. It is often the silent echo of energy being invested elsewhere. The difference is felt in the lack of passion, in the hurried kiss, or in the absence of the small gestures that once came naturally. Body posture also reveals much more than words. A man who carries a secret often displays tension without realizing it. His shoulders may be stiff, his arms crossed more often, or his movements restless. These are defensive gestures, as if his body were building a wall between him and the possibility of being confronted. Even silence speaks when he hesitates before answering, when his breathing changes with a simple question, or when his tone shifts without explanation. It is important to understand that these signs do not usually appear in isolation. One small change might mean nothing, but when several changes happen together, they form a picture that is difficult to ignore. A man can excuse himself with work stress, financial worries, or tiredness, and sometimes these explanations are real. But when excuses repeat and the body consistently tells another story, the message becomes clear. The real challenge is that many women, out of love or fear of losing the relationship, choose to rationalize these signs. They tell themselves he is only tired, that the distance is temporary, that everything will soon return to normal. The mind does this as a defense mechanism, to avoid the pain of facing betrayal. It feels safer to believe in excuses than to confront the possibility that affection and loyalty may have shifted to another place. But ignoring the body's signals does not erase the truth. It only delays the inevitable discovery, often making the hurt deeper when the truth can no longer be denied. The body is incapable of lying for long periods. Sooner or later, the unconscious betrays the mask. A nervous smile, a sudden shift in breathing, or a distracted look at the wrong moment can reveal more than any message left on a phone. To truly understand whether something is wrong, it is necessary to pay attention to what he does, not just to what he says. Actions reveal what words try to cover. The man who once leaned toward you now leans away. The one who once held your hand now lets it go too soon. The one who once shared silence with you now avoids it, filling every moment with noise or distraction. Observing these signs does not mean jumping to conclusions without reason. It means allowing yourself to see the whole picture, not just the part he presents, because when the body speaks, it does so with honesty. And while it may hurt to face the truth, it is better to recognize the signs than to live in illusions that consume your peace day after day. The body cannot hide what the heart tries to conceal. It is in the small gestures, the subtle silences, and the movements he does not control that the truth reveals itself. And once you learn to see this language, you realize that betrayal does not always need evidence on a screen. Often, it is already written in his behavior, waiting for you to open your eyes to it. Emotional distance that grows in silence. When infidelity enters a relationship, one of the first places it shows is in emotional connection. Words may still be spoken, routines may still look the same, but something invisible begins to grow between two people. Distance. It is not always loud or obvious. In fact, the most painful kind of distance is often silent. It builds slowly, almost unnoticed, until the closeness that once existed feels like a memory. Emotional distance does not begin with arguments or open conflicts. It often starts with small things. A man who used to share details about his day no longer feels the need to talk. Where once he came home eager to tell stories, now he offers short answers as if conversation were a duty. The topics become shallow, and the warmth that once filled the room turns into cold formality. Silence in this sense is not peace. It is absence. Another sign of growing emotional distance is the lack of genuine presence. He might be in the same room, but his mind is elsewhere. He listens, but not fully. He nods, but without attention. The connection of eyes, the interest in little details, the joy of simple exchanges, all of this fades. What remains is a surface-level coexistence that leaves the partner feeling alone, even when not physically alone. This change hurts deeply because intimacy is not built only on physical closeness. Emotional intimacy is what makes two people feel like a team, like partners walking side by side. When that foundation weakens, the entire relationship starts to tremble, and betrayal thrives in this empty space where attention and affection once lived but are now missing. It is important to understand that silence can say more than words. When he withdraws into quietness, it is not always because he is tired. Sometimes silence is a wall. It is a way to avoid closeness because closeness would require honesty. A man who carries secrets often prefers silence to conversation, because every word risks exposure. And so slowly, silence replaces laughter and distance replaces connection. For many women, this shift feels confusing. They wonder if they did something wrong, if they became less interesting, if they are the reason for the change. But in reality, emotional distance is rarely about the partner's worth. It is about the man's divided loyalty. When energy is invested elsewhere, less remains for the relationship he is supposed to nurture. What feels like disinterest is often the natural result of his attention being pulled in another direction. This emotional gap does not appear overnight. It builds like layers of fog, each day making it harder to see the closeness that used to exist. At first, it might seem small, fewer compliments, less eye contact, shorter conversations. But as it grows, it creates a cold atmosphere where affection feels forced and even the simplest gestures lose meaning. Another painful part of this distance is the way it reshapes conflict. Before, disagreements may have led to discussion, to resolution, even to growth. But when emotional distance has settled in, conflict turns into avoidance. Instead of fighting for the relationship, he avoids deep talks altogether. Problems are brushed aside. Emotions are left unspoken, and silence becomes the default response. This avoidance deepens the sense of loneliness for the partner, who feels abandoned not only in love but also in struggle. To recognize emotional distance is to admit that something essential is missing. It takes courage because acknowledging it means facing the possibility that betrayal may be the reason behind it. Yet ignoring it only prolongs the suffering. Distance does not heal on its own. It either grows larger or is addressed directly. The painful truth is that love cannot survive where emotional intimacy has died. Two people can live under the same roof, share meals, and even sleep in the same bed. But without emotional closeness, the relationship becomes a shell. It may still look whole from the outside, but inside it is hollow. When a man is unfaithful, this hollowness becomes the silent evidence. His words may deny, his phone may hide the proof, but his heart no longer invests in the same way. The laughter that once came easily feels forced. The interest that once was natural turns into indifference. Silence in this case is not neutral, it is a testimony. Emotional distance is often harder to face than physical absence, because at least when someone is gone, the reason is clear. But when someone is present in body and absent in soul, the pain is sharper. It is the ache of knowing that the person you love is there, but no longer truly with you. This is why emotional distance becomes one of the clearest indicators of infidelity. It reveals that his loyalty has shifted, not only in action but in heart. And while silence can be endured for a time, eventually it becomes impossible to ignore. A relationship cannot survive long when love has been replaced by distance. Do you want to understand more deeply why you feel what you feel? The Jung Method reveals the hidden patterns of your mind. The link is pinned in the first comment. Changes in intimacy that reveal the truth. Intimacy is one of the most sensitive areas in any relationship. It is where words are no longer needed, where bodies speak, and where the deepest connection between two people is expressed. Because of this, changes in intimacy are often one of the clearest signs that something is not right. When a man is unfaithful, he may try to keep up appearances in public, but in private, where vulnerability should be natural, his behavior often shifts in ways that cannot be ignored. One of the first changes that may appear is a sudden lack of desire. Where once there was enthusiasm, now there is indifference. Excuses like tiredness, stress, or being too busy become frequent. While these reasons can sometimes be genuine, a consistent pattern of disinterest is rarely accidental. Intimacy requires emotional presence, and when that presence has been given elsewhere, what remains in the relationship feels hollow. In other cases, the change shows up as the opposite, a sudden increase in intensity. A man who is hiding infidelity may overcompensate by becoming unusually affectionate, as if trying to cover up the truth. He might initiate intimacy more often, but the energy behind it feels different. Instead of closeness, it feels like distraction or guilt relief. The act may be present, but the connection is absent. The partner senses this difference even if she cannot explain it in words. Another shift occurs in the quality of touch. True intimacy carries tenderness, presence, and focus. But when betrayal is involved, touch often becomes mechanical. The caress loses its depth, the embrace loses its warmth, and the small details that once showed care are missing. It is as if the body is there, but the heart has already left. For a sensitive partner, this difference is not imagined. It is felt deeply because intimacy is about more than just physical closeness. It is about emotional investment. The bedroom, which should be a place of safety and connection, often becomes the space where the cracks in loyalty are most visible. A man may turn away after intimacy, avoiding eye contact where before he lingered with affection. He may avoid conversations that naturally arise in moments of closeness, instead reaching for his phone or retreating into silence. These changes, though subtle, are powerful signals that something deeper is happening. It is also common for intimacy to feel inconsistent. There may be days when he is unusually distant, followed by sudden moments of closeness. This inconsistency creates confusion. The partner wonders if the problem is within her, if she did something to push him away, or if she is imagining things. But the truth is that this inconsistency often reflects the inner conflict of a man living a double life. He is pulled between two worlds, and the tension shows in unpredictable patterns of intimacy. Another important indicator is the absence of emotional vulnerability during intimacy. Before, he may have shared feelings, laughter, or moments of genuine connection. Now, even if intimacy happens, it feels empty. The body is present, but the heart is guarded. He avoids revealing too much because vulnerability risks exposing the truth. The result is a closeness that feels shallow, leaving the partner feeling lonelier than if intimacy had not happened at all. For many women, noticing these changes is painful, and the natural reaction is to rationalize them. They tell themselves it is stress, that phases like this happen in every relationship, that it will soon improve. And sometimes stress or routine can indeed affect intimacy. But when the changes are persistent, when they create a clear emotional gap, they must not be ignored. The body cannot fake closeness for long. What makes these changes even more telling is how they contrast with the past. A man who once reached for his partner with ease, who once showed excitement in the simplest moments, now avoids or rushes through them. This shift is not only physical, it reflects where his emotional energy is going. Betrayal drains the life out of intimacy, replacing passion with duty and connection with guilt. Recognizing these signs requires courage, because intimacy is deeply personal. It is the space where denial is easiest, where excuses seem most convincing. But ignoring the truth does not protect the heart. It only delays the pain. By paying attention to these changes, the partner gains clarity. She sees that intimacy is more than an act. It is a reflection of loyalty, presence, and love. When intimacy changes in ways that cannot be explained by stress or routine, it is often the silent testimony of betrayal. The truth reveals itself not in what he says, but in how he connects and in or fails to connect when the masks come off. And in this sacred space where love should be most alive, the absence of genuine closeness becomes the clearest sign of all: excuses and routines that no longer make sense. When a man begins to live a double life, the first cracks often appear in his daily routines. What once followed a clear rhythm suddenly becomes unpredictable. He starts to invent reasons for being absent, explanations that at first sound believable but over time no longer add up. Excuses become the shield behind which he hides, but the problem is that excuses cannot always cover the inconsistencies of his actions. One of the earliest patterns is the sudden increase in time spent away from home. Work becomes the most convenient explanation. Overtime hours, last-minute meetings, and sudden business trips begin to appear with unusual frequency. While it is normal for professional life to have occasional demands, the repetition of vague or exaggerated excuses raises questions. A man who was once consistent in his schedule now seems to live with endless obligations, yet offers no clear details. Another common shift is in the use of technology. The phone, which used to be casually left on the table, now becomes an object he guards closely. Calls are taken in another room. Messages are answered with his back turned. Notifications are quickly hidden, and passwords are changed more often than necessary. When questioned, he might respond with irritation, claiming the need for privacy or accusing his partner of being controlling. But the reality is that these sudden habits differ from his past behavior, and the change itself speaks louder than his words. Routines also change in subtle ways. He may leave the house earlier than usual or come back later, always with reasons that sound too rehearsed. Gym sessions, errands, or traffic delays become part of his daily explanations. Each on its own might seem harmless, but together they form a pattern of distance. A pattern where time once shared as a couple is replaced with solitude and uncertainty. Excuses are not always about absence. Sometimes they are about mood. He may explain his irritability as stress, his disinterest as exhaustion, or his distraction as being preoccupied with responsibilities. While all of these can be true in certain moments, the persistence of such explanations signals that something deeper is going on. Life has challenges, but when every emotional gap is justified by the same vague answers, the partner begins to see through the thin veil of excuses. Another telling sign is inconsistency. Stories do not always align. Details shift when questions are asked again. He may forget what he said before or provide explanations that contradict one another. A man who is hiding betrayal often lives in a state of improvisation, creating narratives to cover his actions. But lies, even small ones, are difficult to maintain consistently. Eventually, the threads begin to unravel. The emotional tone behind the excuses is also revealing. Instead of calmly explaining, he may become defensive or irritated. Simple questions are treated as accusations. Curiosity from the partner is met with frustration. This overreaction often comes from guilt. Deep down, he knows the explanations are weak, and the anger is a way to divert attention from the truth. Routines that once brought stability now bring confusion. Shared dinners become rare. Weekends together are replaced with commitments. The rhythm that once defined the relationship is broken, and the partner begins to feel like a guest in her own life. This disruption is not accidental. It is the visible mark of loyalty being divided, of energy being given elsewhere. Many women at first try to justify these changes. They tell themselves that careers demand more, that stress is natural, that routines shift as life evolves. And while all of that can be true, what distinguishes normal changes from betrayal is the lack of consistency and transparency. Real obligations can be explained clearly. Real stress can be shared openly. But when excuses pile up and routines no longer feel genuine, the hidden truth becomes harder to deny. The key is not to look at one isolated excuse, but at the pattern as a whole. A single late night does not prove anything, but repeated absences, guarded technology, vague explanations, and constant defensiveness form a picture that cannot be ignored. It is in this pattern that betrayal leaves its clearest trace. At its core, betrayal thrives in secrecy, and secrecy requires excuses. The more he tries to hide, the more excuses he creates. But with time, the excuses lose weight. They sound empty, rehearsed, disconnected from reality. And when routines stop making sense, they stop being believable. That is when the partner begins to see that what is hidden is not just a busy schedule, but a divided heart. The sudden need for privacy and secrets. One of the clearest changes that can reveal infidelity is a man's sudden need for privacy. In a healthy relationship, privacy exists, but it is balanced with openness. Partners may have personal spaces, but they also share naturally. When betrayal enters the picture, this balance shifts. Secrecy grows. What once felt open now feels guarded, and the man who once shared his world begins to build walls. The phone is often the first place where this shift appears. Where he once left it on the table without concern, now he carries it everywhere. It is turned face down, kept in his pocket, or brought into the bathroom. Notifications that used to appear on the screen are now hidden. He may change his password more than once or even create separate accounts. When questioned, he insists that he values his privacy, but the suddenness of the change is what makes it suspicious. Beyond the phone, his behavior changes in other small ways. He becomes more protective of his personal belongings. His laptop is no longer left open. His bag or car may be off limits. He explains these shifts as harmless habits, but in reality, secrecy rarely grows without reason. The partner who once felt trusted now feels excluded, as if access to his life has been quietly restricted. Conversations also begin to lack transparency. Questions that once received simple, direct answers are now met with vague responses. He might say, "Don't worry about it, it's nothing," or "You're imagining things." These dismissals are not only evasive, but also create doubt. They leave the partner questioning herself, wondering if she is being paranoid. This doubt is often intentional. By labeling her concern as insecurity, he avoids giving real answers. Another sign of secrecy is defensiveness. When asked simple questions, he reacts with irritation. Instead of calmly explaining, he accuses his partner of not trusting him. This reversal shifts the focus, making her feel guilty for even asking. But the anger itself reveals the truth. If there was nothing to hide, transparency would come naturally. Defensiveness is often a mask for guilt. It is also common for routines to include unexplained gaps. He may be unavailable for hours, with excuses that sound too general. His stories may lack detail or change when repeated. For example, he says he was with friends but avoids giving names. He claims he was busy but cannot say with what. These vague responses build a pattern where secrecy becomes the new normal. The need for privacy is not only about hiding actions. It also creates emotional distance. He shares less about his thoughts, feelings, or plans. Where once he involved his partner in decisions, now he makes choices alone. The result is a growing wall between them, not only in actions but also in connection. Betrayal thrives in this silence, feeding on the lack of openness. For many women, these changes feel confusing. They wonder if they are overreacting, if perhaps every person has the right to privacy. And while privacy is healthy, secrecy is different. Privacy respects the relationship while still honoring individuality. Secrecy excludes the partner, shutting her out from what used to be shared. The difference lies in intent. Privacy protects personal space. Secrecy hides actions that would not withstand the light of truth. Another painful aspect of secrecy is how it erodes trust. Trust is built on openness. When doors begin to close, suspicion naturally grows. It becomes harder to believe explanations, harder to feel secure, harder to relax. The relationship, which should be a place of safety, turns into a place of doubt. And this doubt is not paranoia. It is the body and mind responding to the absence of honesty. Sometimes secrecy is disguised as independence. He may claim he needs more space, more freedom, more time alone. While independence is healthy, the abruptness of this claim is what makes it questionable. A man who suddenly demands privacy without clear reason often uses independence as a cover for betrayal. The partner feels guilty for questioning it, but deep down she senses the difference between genuine independence and secretive withdrawal. Over time, the constant need for privacy becomes exhausting. It forces the partner to guess, to wonder, to analyze every small action. This constant vigilance creates emotional fatigue. The relationship, once a source of comfort, becomes a source of anxiety. And in that space of secrecy, betrayal continues to grow. The truth is simple. When honesty is present, privacy does not feel threatening. It feels natural, balanced, respectful. But when secrecy dominates, The relationship loses its foundation. The man who hides is already divided. His need for privacy is not about self-respect. It is about protecting the secret he carries. And no matter how carefully he guards it, the pattern reveals itself. The constant defensiveness, the vague answers, the sudden restrictions, all point to a truth that words alone cannot erase. A relationship cannot survive when secrecy replaces trust. And sooner or later, the walls he builds to protect his secret will become the very walls that expose it. Shifts in language and tone that betray him. Words are powerful, but tone often tells the real story. When a man is hiding something, especially infidelity, the way he speaks begins to change. The words may sound ordinary, but the tone behind them reveals the tension of what is unspoken. For a partner who listens closely, these changes become one of the most revealing signs that something is wrong. One of the first noticeable shifts is in the consistency of his language. A man who once spoke freely about his day may suddenly become vague. Where there used to be detail and enthusiasm, now there are short answers. It was fine. Nothing important. Just busy. These phrases on their own may seem harmless, but when they become a pattern, they reflect avoidance. The language loses richness because he is no longer sharing openly. Tone also plays a critical role. Guilt has a way of shaping the voice. It can make a man impatient, defensive, or unusually flat. A simple question like, "How was your day?" may trigger irritation, as if the inquiry were an accusation. This reaction often leaves the partner confused, because she only asked with care. The anger is not about the question, it is about the secret behind the answer. Another shift occurs in how he uses affection. Before, pet names or kind words may have flowed naturally. Now they feel absent or worse, forced. The rhythm of his speech loses warmth. The sentences that once carried tenderness now sound mechanical, as though repeated out of obligation. Affection that is genuine always carries a softness in tone, but affection born out of guilt often lacks that authenticity. It is also common for humor to change. A man who once laughed easily may now be more serious, guarded, or distracted. His jokes may carry hidden defensiveness, or he may avoid playful banter altogether. This silence of humor is another sign of internal conflict. Where there is guilt, lightness fades. Even when he tries to laugh, it may sound hollow, as if joy were missing from his voice. Another revealing sign is over-explaining. At times, instead of being vague, he does the opposite, giving too many unnecessary details. This happens because guilt makes him fear suspicion, so he tries to appear transparent. Yet the excess of information feels unnatural. Instead of calming doubts, it creates new ones. His story sounds rehearsed, like lines spoken on a stage rather than genuine conversation. The way he speaks about the partner may also change. Subtle criticism can begin to replace appreciation. Small complaints appear where before there was gratitude. He may comment on habits, routines, or flaws more often, creating a sense of distance. Sometimes this shift is not about the partner at all, but about projecting his own guilt outward. By criticizing her, he tries to justify to himself what he is hiding. Another pattern is the sudden use of defensive phrases. "Why are you asking? Don't you trust me? You're overthinking." These responses are not about clarity. They are tools to shut down questions. They shift the blame onto the partner, making her feel guilty for being attentive. But in truth, the defensiveness itself is a confession. If there were nothing to hide, openness would come naturally. Even silence becomes a language. When questions are met with pauses that last too long, when answers feel delayed, the silence in between speaks volumes. Hesitation is often a sign of calculation. A man trying to choose words carefully so he will not expose himself. But the very act of hesitation betrays the truth. The subconscious also shapes tone in moments of stress. A man who is confronted may speak louder than necessary, or his voice may crack in ways it did not before. These slips are difficult to control because they come from emotion, not logic. And in those brief cracks, the secret reveals itself. It is important to note that these changes do not always mean betrayal. Stress, fatigue, or personal struggles can also affect the way someone speaks. But the difference lies in the pattern. When language, tone, and defensiveness combine with other signs, distance, secrecy, changes in intimacy, the meaning becomes clear. For the partner, recognizing these shifts requires both observation and courage. It means listening not only to the words but also to what lies beneath them, the way he avoids detail, the irritation at simple questions, the sudden absence of warmth. These are not coincidences. They are the voice of guilt trying to disguise itself as normalcy. At its core, betrayal cannot stay hidden in words forever. Even when the phone is locked and the schedule is explained, the tone betrays the truth, because the voice carries the weight of the heart and the heart cannot lie for long. The way he projects guilt onto you. Guilt is heavy, and carrying it alone is uncomfortable. When a man is unfaithful, he often struggles with the inner weight of what he has done. Instead of facing his own choices, he begins to project that guilt onto his partner. This projection is not always obvious at first. It shows up in subtle accusations, misplaced anger, or criticism that feels unfair. But over time, the pattern becomes clear. He is trying to shift the responsibility for his own betrayal onto the one person who is not guilty at all. One of the first signs of this projection is unwarranted suspicion. He may begin accusing his partner of things she has not done. Simple actions are questioned. If she is late, he wonders where she was. If she is on her phone, he wants to know who she is texting. These accusations seem irrational, but they are actually reflections of his own behavior. Because he is hiding something, he assumes she might be too. His guilt distorts his perception, leading him to see dishonesty, even where there is none. Another way guilt is projected is through criticism. A man who once admired his partner may suddenly find flaws in everything she does. He complains about her habits, her tone, or her choices. These criticisms often come out of nowhere and feel disproportionate. The truth is, they are not about her at all. They are about his own need to justify what he is hiding. By convincing himself that she is not enough, he tries to excuse his betrayal in his own mind. Defensiveness also plays a role in projection. When asked simple questions, he reacts with irritation, accusing her of being controlling or mistrustful. Instead of answering calmly, he flips the script, making her feel guilty for even asking. This tactic shifts the focus away from his actions and places the blame on her. Over time, she begins to doubt herself, wondering if she is being unreasonable. In reality, her instincts are correct, but his guilt is manipulating the conversation. Another form of projection is emotional withdrawal, followed by blame. He may pull away, stop sharing, and become distant. Then, when the partner notices and asks what is wrong, he accuses her of being too demanding or too needy. The cycle repeats. He creates the distance, then blames her for noticing it. This strategy allows him to hide behind guilt while making her feel responsible for the cracks in the relationship. Sometimes the projection becomes even more direct. He might accuse his partner of being unfaithful. These accusations are especially painful because they flip the reality upside down. The one who is loyal is questioned, while the one who betrays pretends to be the victim. This reversal is a common tactic of guilt, because by shifting suspicion outward, he temporarily relieves the pressure he feels inside. The emotional effect of this projection on the partner is profound. She begins to feel confused, doubting her own perception. She may even start to believe that she is the problem, that she is too sensitive, too suspicious, or too demanding. This confusion is exactly what guilt-driven projection creates. It clouds clarity, making it harder for her to see the truth that is unfolding in front of her. Another layer of projection is the sudden focus on independence. He may insist that he needs more space, more freedom, more time apart. He frames it as her being suffocating or controlling, even if she has not changed her behavior. This insistence is not about her. It is his way of justifying the distance he has already created in order to hide his betrayal. The projection allows him to blame her for boundaries that he himself has broken. The irony is that projection often reveals more than it hides. The very accusations he makes are often the exact things he is guilty of. When he accuses her of lying, it is because he is lying. When he suspects her of hiding, it is because he is hiding. When he claims she is distant, it is because he is already emotionally gone. In this way, his guilt speaks through his words, exposing what he desperately tries to conceal. For the partner, recognizing projection is difficult but essential. It requires stepping back and asking, are these accusations truly about me, or are they mirrors of his own actions? When criticism appears out of nowhere, when suspicion feels baseless, when blame does not match reality, These are signs of projection. They show that the guilt he refuses to carry alone is being pushed onto someone else. At its core, projection is a way of escaping accountability. It delays the moment when he must face himself. But it also damages the relationship deeply because it poisons trust and shifts blame unfairly. No relationship can survive when one person carries guilt and places the burden on the other. In the end, projection is not a sign of strength, but of weakness. It is the unconscious confession of a man who cannot face his own choices. And 4, the partner. Seeing through this pattern is a step toward clarity, because the truth is simple. The guilt he tries to put on you was never yours to carry. Why facing the truth is the hardest step. Discovering betrayal is never simple. The signs may be visible, the intuition may be loud, but admitting the truth requires immense courage. For many women, the hardest part is not noticing the changes. It is accepting what those changes mean. Because facing the truth does not only expose the man's actions, it also forces her to confront the future of the relationship and the pain of broken trust. Denial is a natural shield. It protects the heart from immediate pain. Believing the excuses, overlooking the changes, or rationalizing the distance can feel safer than admitting betrayal. Yet denial only delays healing. The longer the truth is avoided, the deeper the wound becomes when it finally surfaces. Another reason it is so hard to face the truth is fear of loss. Accepting that a partner has been unfaithful can mean accepting the possible end of the relationship. It may mean facing separation, rebuilding life alone, or confronting feelings of rejection. These fears are heavy, and they make silence seem easier than confrontation. But silence never restores love. It only prolongs uncertainty. It is also difficult because betrayal damages self-image. Many women blame themselves, wondering what they did wrong or what they lacked. But infidelity is not a reflection of their worth. It is a choice made by the one who betrayed. Facing the truth means shifting blame back to where it belongs, and that shift requires strength. The hardest step, then, is choosing clarity over comfort. Clarity is painful in the beginning, but it is the only path to healing. Comfort in illusions may feel easier, but it keeps the wound open. When the truth is faced directly, it hurts, but it also frees. It allows decisions to be made from reality, not from lies. In the end, facing betrayal is not only about uncovering his truth, it is about reclaiming your own. It is the moment when silence ends and self-respect begins. Though the step is heavy, it is also the step that restores dignity, strength, and the possibility of a life built on honesty. Because only when the truth is faced can the healing truly begin.